calm, focus, happiness. You're listening to a Mindfulness Mode interview. I'm your host and mindfulness life coach, Bruce Langford. I interview guests from all walks of life who use mindfulness in a lot of different ways. If you enjoy this interview today, please subscribe right here on YouTube. If you'd like to listen on another device, subscribe to our Mindfulness Mode podcast by using a podcast app and listen at the gym or in your car, wherever you'd like. You can also listen directly on our website and have a look at the show notes. Check out mindfulnessmode.com. You'll see links and other helpful information. So sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode of Mindfulness Mode. Reach new heights of calm, focus, and happiness on Mindfulness Mode with me, your host and mindfulness life coach, Bruce Langford. Hey, Mindful Tribe, I have got a guy here today that, oh man, this is going to be such an awesome interview. I know this already. I've got Jaret Grossman here today. Hey, Jaret, are you in mindfulness mode today?
I'm in mindfulness mode, baby.
That's awesome. Jaret Grossman is a highly skilled guy when it comes to guiding and advising others and moving them to take action. In fact, he's in a league all his own, way up there in the upper echelon of spectacular business consultants and mindset coaches. His brilliant insight is illuminated in many of his YouTube videos, which have received, get this, over 30 million views. Jaret's known as one of New York's best wrestlers. He holds a law degree, and he also has a health and fitness brand called Muscle Prodigy. He's the author of a book called Cracking the Code, the personal growth formula for success, leadership, and leaving a legacy. And who doesn't want to do that? So, you know, it's awesome to have you here today, Jaret. I can't wait to talk to you. We're talking, of course, about mindfulness and mindset. What does mindfulness mean to you?
Hey, thanks so much for having me on, and that was quite a powerful introduction. Yeah, seriously, thank you.
Yeah, no, man, it's my pleasure. Like you have really kicked butt in this whole area of mindset, helping people. Like because you know, so many of us are just stuck and we struggle, and we're like, why am I not achieving, and why am I not? So is it through mindfulness? Is that part of the way that you help people?
Yeah, so I think you have to be, if you can align your conscious with your subconscious, that's the ultimate, right? So being mindful of what exactly is going on within you in terms of your reactions, in terms of your emotions, why are you experiencing certain things? Why do you feel negative energy towards a certain thing? Why do you feel jealousy or envy or hatred? Why do you have a conflict with this person? That's all a concept of mindfulness, right? Once you could bring awareness to it, that's the first step to being able to change it. So once you do bring that conscious awareness to it, now you realize, am I really at effect to these things? Maybe I could change them. And then that's where the seed starts in terms of being able to say, well, what can I create for myself? What do I ultimately want? And what we all ultimately want is a feeling of peace within, is fulfillment. And fulfillment is twofold. So you mentioned the concept of achievement, which we've got to be able to achieve our inner blueprint. I believe we all have an inner blueprint. So if we were meant to be sort of a pine tree, it's going to be different than somebody else who's meant to be an oak tree kind of thing, right? And then the second part is really feeling at peace within and enjoying the journey along that entire road.
And so you are able to help other people find what that inner blueprint is. How do you go about that when you first connect with somebody and they're just hungry to achieve? How do you do that?
Yeah, so ambition is highly important. They want something, but a lot of people meander about not knowing exactly what you want. And I often use the analogy of, if you get in your car, you got to have a destination, right? Or you're just going to try to stumble upon Los Angeles and Hollywood. You want the lights and so forth, and you end up in a cornfield. You know, you didn't reach your target. You're not going to be too pleased or happy, right? So find out what that destination is, and then you can reverse engineer the process. So with most people, they've had glimpses of who they want to be in the future. And the more you can connect to that future version of yourself or the highest form of yourself kind of thing, Matthew McConaughey articulated this pretty well, where he said, my hero is always the 10-year future version of myself, right? So find out what that thing is, and then that's going to give you a jump start to be able to chase something. But it's going to tap into something that I really invite everybody to open their eyes to, is something called pull motivation as opposed to push motivation, because you can't force yourself. And a lot of achievers are forcing themselves. They're trying to force a door open when the universe is trying to point you in certain directions in a way, and it's opening your eyes to it. And that doesn't mean you don't have to be tough throughout life. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be having to open those doors in a way, but there are specific times for certain things. And if you have more trust and faith in the process, those doors will be open for you with a lot less pain and a lot less resistance. If you really are more intuitive by nature, you trust your instincts and feelings in a way, and you flow through that process and just have more faith and trust.
Yeah, well, you've really got that nailed. That sort of pull and push thing, how we have to kind of allow things to happen. That's a big part of mindfulness, not trying to push things and force things. And we get into that place where we're like, so man, we're so determined, especially men. Do you think that's true? Like we just want to achieve this thing.
Energy. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when we notice that we're not achieving it, that's when sometimes we start to lose our confidence and we start to think 100%. Like, what the hell? What is this? So how do you advise people when they have lost their confidence because of this?
Absolutely. You tell metaphors, you tell stories that at least give them an interpretation of, well, how did it work for somebody else in terms of, because that's the biggest threatening thing, is dropping our ego. We want to prove that we're right ultimately. But if you could find somebody that they look up to who's went through a similar type of situation, and then now it's like, well, I'm not a failure. Their ego isn't in that defense mode as much, right? Because then they realize, well, it's possible for me as well. So for instance, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, was trying so hard to be a professional football player. If he had kept going at it and didn't realize his true calling in life, which is what he's experiencing right now, which is acting, which was off of the heels of his wrestling career, right? It was professional wrestling. We would have never been given the gift of him, for instance, and he wouldn't be living in a beautiful state that he is right now, for instance, if he was trying to make that thing work. So it's in recognizing and understanding sometimes the universe wants you to be a pine tree, but you're trying to be an oak tree. And that's where the pain and the resistance comes in. And early in my career, the only way I know this is from experience, where I tried forcing a lot of things in my life and just realizing, Kobe Bryant wanted to play basketball forever. At some point, he had to realize my body can't do this forever or whatnot. So you can continue to force it, something that's unnatural. It's not organic in the universe at some point. Or you could go with what this new chapter is, and if you find beauty in that, you're going to recognize that if you were ignorant to this transition from summer to winter, for instance, then you're going to try to wear summer clothes in the winter, and ultimately you're going to get sick.
Yeah.
So it's really an understanding what the universe has in store for you.
So let's talk about you, Jaret. Way back when you wanted to be a wrestler, but you didn't feel that successful at first, did you? Tell us about that. Tell us that story.
Yeah, so I started wrestling in the 8th grade, and I was actually going to quit. But I talked with my dad, and my dad was basically telling me, don't quit, just keep going, give it a shot. And then I was terrible at it. I won one wrestling match the first year. But there was some ambition inside me that felt maybe it was an inner calling, part of my destiny, that I was had to figure this thing out in a way. And that needs to be there, this spark, this destiny spark, in a way that it's like, this is part of your calling. And you'll push yourself through pain if you can connect with an idea that this is part of your destiny. Then it becomes something called eustress as opposed to distress. Distress, think disease. The best you can recover is back to your original self. Eustress is like lifting weights. You put yourself through stress and you tear down the muscle fibers, but it could grow and super compensate with even more growth. So you'll put yourself through a little bit of stress in order to come out stronger at the other side, as long as that destiny spark is in there. You feel like it's part of your inner calling, and it was. And then I pushed myself to do extra practices. I had mentors in my life, for instance, that basically said, you could put in the same work as everybody else, but how can you be better than them? You're wrestling them. That's your competition. So if they're putting in 2 hours a day in wrestling practice, that's the norm. You got to be able to put in 4 hours a day, for instance, right? What about the summers? While they're taking off, they're relaxing and partying or whatever it is. How do you go to summer camp? How do you go to tournaments? Do all this stuff. So that's where I really opened my eye to do more in terms of effort, in terms of volume, frequency, all that stuff is going to dictate a better life for myself. And it did. But then you get to a point where the pendulum swings so far where you think that's the only answer to life and that it's just more and more and more. And then you realize, no, that's not the essence of life either. And so then the pendulum sort of comes back. We're all in this search for the sweet spot in a way. And I became ultimately a 3-time All-American wrestler by working really hard and so forth. And then that led me on a journey of a health and fitness business, for instance, and then mentorship and consulting and all that stuff, and just very entrepreneurial by nature.
I'm curious. I watched you in a video talk about, the video was called "How Bad Do You Really Want It?" You just put this up not too long ago. How bad do you really want it? And you start talking, and it's like so inspiring, about, do you want to be successful, but maybe you're hesitant, but you got to give something up. You got to give something up in life. Give certain things up that are harmful for you. And then you go on and you say, you got to give up porn because like when you study what porn does to your brain, then you really understand why you have to give that up. So let's talk about that. Why?
Interesting.
What does this do to your brain, and what is this about? Why do we have to give that up?
Okay, so porn, think of it like duct tape, right? When you put duct tape on the table, the first time it's like really sturdy. It's sticky, right?
Yeah.
And then if you peel it off and then you put it on the second time, it'll be sticky, but not as sticky as the first time. And then keep doing it 100 times, 100 times. This is how the brain works in terms of connections with partners and so forth. Your ability to love will eventually diminish to the point where your brain won't even want to make those connections anymore. Because it just realizes, what's the point of me making these connections, because it's just going to get ripped apart, right? So it becomes very malleable in that sense. And sometimes it takes, you look at porn addicts, for instance, it could take several years for them to regain this ability in a way to look at the world the way that a normal person looks at it. Ultimately, what you want out of life is really a connection with a lifelong partner, even if you don't think so at your younger years. And I was a victim to this as well. Most people have a story, though, that they don't think this girl or this guy is out there. All the good ones are taken, for instance. Well, there's nobody perfect in this world or whatnot. But you do have to start with that belief that she or he is out there in a way. And once you really have that embodied within you, now you're going to be on a quest to become a better human being, because you'll only recognize that the only way to attract who you want is become who that person wants as well. Because it takes two to tango, baby. And if you want perfect, hey, you got to be perfect. And nobody really expects perfection in another counterpart. But you do want somebody who's perfect for you. And in order to, usually it's at a standard that's a little higher than where you're at right now. In terms of what that person's going to ultimately expect out of you. You got to get your habits together and so forth. So I had to go through this process myself. And it was only until I raised the standard for myself and I increased the expectations of myself of what my rituals are going to be, what my routines are going to be, but especially my thoughts. I think that thoughts are sort of everything in a way, that they control every cell in our body. And the mindset is going to either put you in a positive mood with different people or whatnot. And on a spiritual level, when you have negative energy going through you, it's like trying to go underground in a cave and expect to find a palace. It's not going to happen, right? You gotta change something going on within you, and put yourself in a great state or whatnot. But also have certain habits and rituals that the other person wants. But especially in terms of your mind and your mindset, and whether you see beauty in the world or whether you see evil in it.
Yeah, I really like what you said about how we have to be aware of our thoughts. And that's what mindfulness is being, at least part of it, being aware of your thoughts, understanding what's going on inside there. And do you think this is way more a problem with men when it comes to porn, or do you think it's just as much with women as well?
I think porn is more of a male-dominant issue in a way, but I think promiscuity is getting the best of women in a way, and looking for attention and so forth. And so, they're both destructive behaviors, in my opinion. And everybody's got to play their part. And if you want the world to change, first change you.
First change you. Yeah. Well, let's talk about money, Jaret. Money is a tool. It's like a hammer, you said, in a video I watch. A hammer that can be used to build a house, or a hammer can hit somebody over the head. How do we get a hold of that whole thing, about money? Some people, it just flows into their lives so easily, and others, they just can't seem to make a dime no matter what.
Absolutely. So money is a very controversial topic in a way, and it's only because people make it controversial based on their thoughts. It's a category of life, in my opinion. And some people are really naturally funny, right? But we don't place as much judgment on that in a sense. Right. And so the more you can rip out your inner resentment towards people with money, you'll see how different things happen to you in your life, and the more that you can move towards it, it's just a category. And people with money, it's not like they have no problems, right? So, and that's a lot of our categorization, or we blanket it in that idea that once I get money, for instance, then I'll have no problems, for instance. But they're struggling with different things, different categories that you may be very good at and very skilled at. So we're all going through a different struggle in a way. But it's definitely something that you got to take care of. It's a very important resource in life. As you said, it's a hammer. It's an essential hammer, especially if you do want to leave a legacy. You got to create usually an empire that is going to take a lot of capital in a way. And a lot of businesses fail not because they're not hardworking, not because they don't have great ideas. It's because they can't execute them because of capital in a way. They're hamstrung. So the better you are at understanding the money game, for instance, the more disciplined you are at being able to invest for the long term in terms of the market and take advantage of that. Tony Robbins just put out a book, Money Master the Game, and the other one, Unshakable, Unbreakable, one of the other, I forgot. But learn about this concept that even if you're not making a lot of income, for instance, that you could still take advantage and build some long-term wealth for yourself. But again, most people's problem is that their income levels are not where they should be in a way. And you do have to hustle in your early years. And that means taking up 2-3 jobs. That means working 6-7 days a week in a way to get to a certain plateau and being smart with it and so forth. But a lot of it's going to come with the negative connotations and associations that we have, the false associations that we have with money, meaning the first words that you think of when you think of money. What if there's greed, if these are the words coming up, you're naturally going to push it away every time that it comes to your life, or you'll self-sabotage. You'll get a check for $20,000, and then all of a sudden that $20,000 is gone. You just spent it on junk because you secretly, innately didn't want it. And so if you could really understand those patterns, and the most important thing is just understanding the people around you in your inner circle. We all have expectations of what they think they want us to be. And a lot of those that we feel threatened by the idea of that if we have a lot of money in our lives, who is that going to bring into our life? What will that mean in terms of my relationship with this person? And those are things that you got to rip out. And it's not the weeds, it's the surface level root that's causing the weeds. And you really need to examine and explore that.
Yeah, well, talk about hustle. You've hustled with so many of the things that you're doing in your life, and one of them was writing the book, Cracking the Code. So not only did you create all these videos and get all these followers, you put together this book. That takes mindfulness, focus, and being grounded. How are you able to take that fighting spirit, that ability you have to help other people, with their mindset, and then put it into words? Did you find that tough?
Yeah, that was one of the greatest accomplishments, writing a book for me, because I had all these thoughts and I would do them in video format, a lot of times, but then actually put it in a coherent manner in text form and make everything flow was a very big process for me. But the most important thing for writing, for instance, is that great writers aren't great writers; they're great editors. So it's about putting it all on paper. I think Ernest Hemingway said, "Write drunk, edit sober." Right, so that that was his line and whatnot, and
yeah, and I think he did that quite a few times from what I know about him.
Yeah, oh yeah, Harry's Bar, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, it's a long editing process. That's the main thing. But take a first step, write some things on paper, and then eventually you could turn it into a manifesto. You could turn it into a book, kind of thing. But I don't want to give the false illusion that I'm this all-powerful person who's just every day I attack and control everything in my universe. That's not the case. It's ebbs and flows of life. There are certainly days and months where I get frustrated. Things aren't happening soon enough for me or whatnot. But it's about understanding, and the more that I go through life, the more I understand that things are supposed to happen at a specific time for a specific reason in a way. And our time is not God's time, the universe's time, and whatnot. And it will come. It's in your heart for a reason, but oftentimes the way we think about how it's supposed to happen is not really the way we're supposed to think about how it's supposed to happen. That it's not supposed to receive, in essence, for you to enjoy alone. It's a concept of we. And the more you tap into this, then the more you understand how intricate the universe is, how intricately designed it is, and everything's sort of ebbing and flowing. And if it's overcast outside, I could want it to be sunny, but I'm just missing the beauty of what is going on in the moment. And the more that you sort of acknowledge the moment in a way, the more you're out of the moment. So you're focusing on it as opposed to just being in a creationary process and just letting things move through you. And that's where you're going to find the least amount of pain and the least amount of resistance, and things will sort of come together in a beautiful way.
For sure. Yeah. Jaret, I've done work in the whole area of bullying prevention and for about 10, 12 years, almost 15 actually. And I always like to ask a question about this because I think mindset is at the bottom of this whole thing. Like, have you ever been bullied? Like, what about when you were a kid? I think you have a story about this that you can share with us.
Yeah. So I was in, the ninth grade, I think. And a tiny kid, 100 pounds, soaking wet. So I was like the third smallest kid in the grade, something like that. And I was at the Boys and Girls Club, and some kid who was actually younger than me, a year younger than me, was getting into a little confrontation with me or whatnot. We stepped outside, and then all of a sudden a group of kids swarm around me and screaming, "Fight, fight, fight," that whole thing. And I don't know really what's going on. I didn't want this. I didn't invite this necessarily, but got into a scuffle, got into a fight, and got beat up. And then I had to go into school after losing a fight. It's a very embarrassing situation, obviously. Welts on my forehead and so forth. But the ideas with bully prevention, for me, what I recognized there, fortunately, was that I had to get stronger, and I had to build up my body to the point where somebody would look at me and say, "I don't even want to mess with that guy," kind of thing, right? Because you could scream pacifism to the hills, but not everybody buys into that methodology. So what do you do with somebody whose modus operandi is not pacifism? If they're looking to cause destruction, you got to be well equipped. The best prevention for war oftentimes is a great military, as they say, right? So build myself up in a way, and just recognizing, you could stop this bully, but what's to stop the next bully? So
what did you do? Did you join a gym right away, or what did you do to build yourself up?
My childhood friend Richie Allen actually what motivated me in the beginning to be able to join a gym, and we worked out together, because he was lifting for a couple of years at that point, I think, or a year or two, and then he dragged me into the gym and helped me work out, and we stayed motivated together. And then I really took to it like a sponge, and then I became very very passionate about wrestling, to the point where I did sacrifice almost everything in the name of progress in wrestling, in a way, parties and eating junk food and all that kind of stuff. And I devoted my life to it, and I was able to become a 3-time All-America wrestler. So at that point, you'll notice there's an energetic level within all of us, and the energetic level that you emit to other people is, I don't even want to mess with this person. I just sense that they know they not only know how to handle themselves, but they're just internally tough to the point where they don't have to learn the lesson. I think that's a spiritual thing that's going on.
Right. And that energetic level you're talking about, some would call that confidence. Am I right?
Yeah, I guess so, right? Like, and confidence comes from the word confidere in Latin, which means with trust in yourself, right? So to trust in yourself is usually a very long process because there's these, I like to call them like leaves on top of a little seed inside of us, and it's almost like this God spark in a way. There's a highest form of ourself within. So, for instance, I'll try to walk you down sort of like an analogy. It's like, let's say that you were a younger kid and you're afraid to tell your parents about a report card that you received where you didn't get the best grade, right? So there's these leaves of fear and doubt that are on us in a way where we understand that we have to pull the leaf off. We have to push through at some point. But we're hesitant. We're rationalizing in our head, like, I don't know how to do this, whatnot, right? But then eventually you're going to get to a point where you're going to do it. You're going to have to do it at some point. So if you could reverse engineer it by understanding that, wait a second, this thing is already inside of me that already knows how to do it or will do it at some point. So all this other leaf, it's just crap. Essentially, how do I pull this? How do I work from the inside out? Essentially, how do I work from this seed that's within me to then be in charge in a way?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And a lot of the people that I work with, it seems like maybe they had that confidence, that inner energy, and then they lost it for whatever reason. And then you have to help them find that again.
Sure.
Yeah.
Life beats the hell out of us.
Yeah.
All of us. I think George Lucas, I was listening to an interview for Star Wars, and he was basically saying, in his 20s, he thought he could do everything in a way, and then you learn very quickly when 30 years old that you cannot do everything in a way, right? So it's like it happens to all of us, but it's not so much of having like an ego to the point where you're trying to be confident about things that you're not really confident about. It's about really understanding what your purpose is in the world, and the more you connect to that inner thing that's going on as opposed to this outer stuff, is where I'm really getting at, then the more you're going to be able to feel comfortable in your own skin and trust yourself and so forth.
Yeah, for sure. Jaret, my next questions are just 5 quick answer questions. Who is one person who has influenced you in this whole mindfulness mindset area?
Can I name more than one? No, there have been a lot of people, but my parents, for instance, Tony Robbins was a huge influence. Just listening to his stuff a lot. Mentors in my life, for instance, a guy named Max, who was mentoring me in wrestling and really taught me the value of hard work. For instance, my college wrestling coach Parker, lots of individuals along the path. Even clients of mine, they teach me stuff every single day. So it's just. It's lots of people that play a huge part into this. Yeah,
I've heard you say that in some of your videos, that you learn so much from the people you work with and the people that you help. So, yeah. So how has mindfulness affected your emotions, Jaret?
So when you get to a point, you realize that you're doing the same patterns over and over again, and then you realize that it's painful, and then it's only until you learn how to break free from the patterns will you experience peace. So the only way to do that is mindfulness, essentially, is being consciously aware of, I feel this thing and I normally do this. Why? So the real root is the why. Why are you doing it? Is there a reason? Is it serving you? Is it not serving you? But if you really dig deep, the layers of the why, there's this root why that just gives you this aha breakthrough moment that it's like, wow. And then you can shift it. And then you could start implanting a new pattern in a way that's more beneficial to you.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. How is breathing a part of your mindfulness practice?
Most of us breathe shallow and into our chest.
Yeah.
And it's a shortened breath. And that's usually the same pattern that happens when you study people who are very anxious, tense all the time, fear-driven. It's shallow breaths, right? If you could do the reverse, whereas you breathe deep into your belly, now you're going to be much more relaxed. You're going to be calm. So alpha, when we talk about alpha, it's really like alpha male, alpha female, or so forth. It's really coming from brain waves. And alpha is actually an alertness, but a calm to it also. So that's sort of the mode that you want to be on a daily basis. That's grounded, like you were talking about earlier, Bruce.
Right.
That's when you're in control. Is when you're alert, but you're calm and you can process the information without panicking.
Right, right. Can you share an app which might help you to be more mindful? Maybe it's like a productivity thing. Maybe it helps you focus. I don't know. Do you use apps at all?
Yeah, not necessarily for that, but I'll give you a technique. Go back to to be more mindful or to be more in a state of peace. What?
I would say either one of those two things, because I think they're related.
So to be at a sense of peace or to enjoy life, that's ultimately what we want. Go back to a childhood memory of yours, and where you were euphoric, where you were really having the time of your life. And literally place yourself in there. So you're not looking at yourself from a third-party perspective, but you're seeing it through the lens of if you were a kid again.
Right.
And you'll notice that it was a very bodily experience. It wasn't a whole lot of thinking. And anytime we identify with our mind or where there's a lot of judgment especially, that's when we experience suffering and pain. The more you can get into your body, the more you're going to enjoy life in essence, because then you're going to feel like it's an experience as opposed to something you're detached from. So you want to get into an experience mode, and that means literally bringing up the exact physical movements you did when you were a kid again, which is you could shake your hands, and especially smiling. A great technique to understand like a genuine smile from a fake smile is if you have the little crow's eyes over here where they crease by your eyes.
Uh-huh.
And that's a genuine smile. So if you could start smiling and you could start tightening up your core and feeling those feelings and making the noises that you used to make, whatever it was, right, you're going to actually live that experience right now. So that's a great way to really get back to the present and enjoy yourself. And then in terms of mindfulness, listen to some relaxing music and think of the thoughts. Here, just when we talk, right, we're speaking, but then there's oftentimes thoughts coming in while we speak. So is that really you? Is that really your like a thought? Because you're speaking, but how can you have a thought also come in? Like I believe that thoughts are coming from a place in a way or God or whatnot, right? So it's just you could view those thoughts as sort of clouds moving over you, and then you could identify which ones that are serving in you and which ones are disempowering. You want to actually watch them float away. So that's a good technique.
Yeah. I didn't ask you this. Do you meditate? Is that part of your routine, part of your life?
Yes, I do. Not usually in the sense of like sitting down with my legs crossed and my eyes closed kind of thing and blocking out, 20, 30 minutes. But I'll envision a beam of light coming down into me and healing certain parts of my body, for instance, or certain deficiencies that are weaknesses of mine, for instance, or when I'm in conflict with something, and that it's magically getting healed, that I don't have to do everything, that I don't make sure the trees grow. I don't make sure that the sun rises and sets. So there's a universe that's at play or whatnot, and just letting that process take a hold of me, but then also spreading that out to other people within my inner circle, my family I start out, and then the community at large and the world at large, in a way that it's getting all taken care of and positive vibes are being sent out. And then that's a state that it literally takes 60 seconds to be able to do. And you could bring yourself back to center.
Awesome. Jaret, I think that you just shared so much incredible value with us today. How can Mindful Tribe connect with you, learn more about what you do, and kind of just stay tuned?
Absolutely. So my first recommendation is that you've got to change your body first, because then you're going to see a visceral transformation that takes place with your body, that you're going to then have much more foundational reason to understand, well, change is possible. So then I can change other things in my life, for instance, right? So that's where it usually starts with people. And the quickest way to break through fear, for instance, fear is physical. It's a neuromuscular reaction. So to get more confidence, you want to get into your body, intense sprints, intense weightlifting. That'll get you out of depression, I can assure you, because you're getting into your body, and oftentimes the blood is just flowing and adrenaline is rushing and stuff like that. That really, you can't think your way out of depression a lot of times. So a 45-day workout program and meal plan guide is what I created. And it's basically a 6.5-week program that gives you the exact blueprint of how to change your body in terms of exactly what to do in the gym and the kitchen. And it's everything for a beginner to start or an advanced person who needs to go back to the basics and fix muscular imbalances and all that kind of stuff, and then gradually progresses you upward. You could go there at MP45. M as in Mary, P as in Paul, 45.com. And if you're into more personal development stuff, higher level thinking, if you really want to change these patterns, I would love to work with you on a one-on-one level. And that's at jaretgrossman.com, JaretGrossman.com. Would love to work with you.
And I'll put all that into the show notes, Jaret, so listeners, you can connect, you can get on there, you can click on these links, and you can do something to make positive changes in your life. And who doesn't want to move forward and create change? Jaret, this has been really great talking with you. I really appreciate you jumping on this call. Thanks so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you so much. This is really, really spectacular, special.
You're welcome. Yeah, take care. Bye now.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Yeah. Hey, Mindful Tribe, thanks for listening to the interview today. If you've enjoyed this interview, please subscribe right here on YouTube. Or if you'd like to listen on another device, you can do that too. Subscribe to our Mindfulness Mode podcast by using a podcast app, and then you can listen anywhere, like when you're driving or riding the subway or on a bus. And you can also check out our website and have a look at our show notes. You can listen directly right there at mindfulnessmode.com. So till next time, Mindful Tribe, use what we've learned today to reach new heights of calm, focus, and happiness. Stay in the mode.